The training hall smelled like fear and disinfectant, which was pretty much standard for Level 7 combat instruction at the Galactic Military Academy. I should know. I am Talvik, Senior Combat Instructor, veteran of 42 planetary conflicts, and owner of 6 arms that have seen more action than most species see in 10 lifetimes. Today, I was about to teach my cadets the most important lesson they would ever learn. Sometimes, you cannot win. Sometimes, survival means running. The assembled students sat in tiered seats around the central projection platform, their various appendages fidgeting with nervous energy. We had representatives from 11 different species in this cohort. Yipper, the young blinker with 4 eyes that never seemed to blink simultaneously, sat in the front row taking frantic notes. Grenth, whose stone-like skin made him look like a walking fortress, occupied 2 seats because of his bulk. There were others too. Flyers, swimmers, methane breathers in their atmospheric suits, all united by one goal: learning to stay alive in a galaxy that really, truly wanted them dead. And then there was the human. Danny sat near the back, looking remarkably unremarkable. 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, no natural armor, no venom sacs, no enhanced sensory organs. Humans were the galaxy's newest members, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 standard years ago. They were enthusiastic, I would give them that. Also reckless, stubborn, and possessed of a bizarre optimism that bordered on delusion. Danny embodied all of these qualities. He wore the standard Academy jumpsuit, his hair cropped short in military fashion, and his expression carried that peculiar human quality I had learned to recognize. Determination mixed with barely suppressed curiosity. "Attention!" I barked, and the room fell silent. My primary arms crossed over my chest, while my secondary arms gestured at the projection platform. Today, we discussed the Void Phantom. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 5 degrees. Good. They had heard the stories. For those unfamiliar, the Void Phantom is an interdimensional predator. It exists partially in our reality and partially in dimensions we cannot access or comprehend. It has been responsible for the complete annihilation of 7 colonies, 12 military outposts, and approximately 400,000 sentient beings across 9 species. I let that number sink in. There are no survivors who have faced one in direct combat. None. The only witnesses are those who observed from a distance or escaped before engagement. I activated the holographic display. The footage was grainy, pulled from a security satellite before it too was destroyed. The creature appeared on screen, and several cadets gasped. I never got tired of that reaction. The Void Phantom looked like someone had taken the concept of a predator and stripped away everything except malice. It had no fixed form, constantly shifting between states of matter, flickering in and out of visible reality. Where it moved, space itself seemed to tear, leaving distortions that hurt to look at. It phases through solid matter. Energy shields are useless. Conventional weapons pass through it as if firing at smoke. I began pacing, 4 arms gesturing while 2 operated the display controls. Plasma fire, kinetic rounds, thermal weapons, quantum disruptors, all tested, all failed. The Phantom exists in a state that makes it essentially invulnerable to everything in our arsenal. Danny raised his hand. Of course he did. Yes, Cadet? I kept my voice neutral, though I already felt the familiar irritation building. Has anyone tried hitting it during its phase transition? The moment when it shifts between our dimension and wherever it comes from? His voice was calm, conversational, as if discussing weather patterns rather than an unstoppable killing machine. No, I said flatly. Because the transition occurs in microseconds, requires predictive capability beyond any computer system we possess, and even if you timed it perfectly, we have no data suggesting vulnerability during that window. The question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. But has anyone actually tried? Danny pressed, and I saw several other cadets shift uncomfortably. They hated when he did this. Cadet Danny, hundreds of trained warriors with centuries of combined experience have faced this creature. They used every weapon, every strategy, every desperate measure available. They all died. Your species has been spacefaring for barely half a century. Perhaps trust that those who came before exhausted every option. I said it more harshly than intended, but humans needed firm boundaries. Give them an inch of possibility, and they would waste valuable time chasing impossible solutions instead of learning survival protocols. Danny nodded slowly, but did not look convinced. Typical. I continued the briefing, showing tactical footage from various encounters. The Phantom moved through a military barricade like it was not there, which technically it was not. Soldiers fired until their weapons overheated, accomplishing nothing except illuminating their own deaths. In another clip, an entire battalion attempted a coordinated retreat. The Phantom simply appeared ahead of them, cutting off escape. The footage ended there. No one wanted to see what came next. Your assignment, I announced, deactivating the display, is to develop survival strategies. Not combat strategies, survival. Tomorrow we run a simulation. You will encounter a holographic void phantom in the training arena. Your objective is to stay alive for 10 minutes while extraction arrives. Not to fight, not to win, to survive. Grenth raised one massive hand. Instructor Telvik, if weapons do not work, what do we do? Run, hide, use the environment, create distance. The Phantom is fast, but not instantaneous. It seems to hunt by sensing biological, electromagnetic fields. Disruptors can mask your signature temporarily. Use them. Your goal is to be boring enough that it chooses another target or loses interest. That is the strategy? Yipper squeaked, all four eyes wide with disbelief. Be boring? That is reality, I replied. Sometimes the only victory is not dying. Pride is for species with regenerative capabilities or multiple backup bodies. The rest of us practice humility and breath retention. A few nervous laughs rippled through the cadets. Humor helped, even dark humor, especially dark humor. Dismissed. Study the materials in your data packets. Get rest. Tomorrow will be stressful enough without fatigue clouding your judgment. The cadets filed out, chattering among themselves, nervous energy driving animated conversations. Danny left last, moving slowly, his eyes distant. He was thinking, which was either promising or dangerous. With humans, it was usually both. I began shutting down the display systems, my middle arms working the controls while my others organized data chips. 40 years of teaching had taught me to read students. Most would panic tomorrow, freeze up, make mistakes. Some would adapt, follow protocols, pass the exercise. A few would surprise me, and one would probably do something stupid. Humans always did. Outside, the twin suns of Vex 9 were setting, casting orange light through the reinforced windows. Beautiful planet. Relatively safe. Perfect for an academy. We chose it specifically because nothing particularly dangerous lived here. Training was risky enough without actual threats. Tomorrow, my cadets would face their fear in controlled conditions. They would learn that survival sometimes meant swallowing pride and accepting limitations. I just hoped the human learned it too, before his stubbornness got someone killed. The academy dormitories never truly slept. Somewhere, someone was always studying, worrying, or making poor decisions fueled by stress and caffeine substitutes. Tonight was no exception. I found Danny in Weapons Lab 3 at 200 hours. I had not been looking for him specifically, just doing my routine security sweep. The labs were supposed to be locked after midnight, but Danny had apparently convinced the automated system that he needed extended access for research purposes. Technically allowed, though highly irregular for a first-year cadet. He had dismantled a standard-issue plasma rifle across 3 workbenches. Components glowed under examination lights, wires and power cells scattered in organized chaos. What concerned me more were the additional items. A graviton flux capacitor from the physics department, a dimensional phase detector used for scanning anomalies, and something that looked suspiciously like a band temporal compression unit. "Cadet, what are you doing?" I asked, stepping into the lab. Danny looked up, completely unsurprised by my presence. "Research, sir. Trying to understand energy interaction patterns with non-standard dimensional matrices. Those components are incompatible. Combining them would result in catastrophic failure." I gestured with 2 arms, while the others crossed disapprovingly. Possibly explosive catastrophic failure. "Only if I connect them using standard integration protocols," Danny replied, returning his attention to a circuit board. "But if I route the power through a recursive loop and use the graviton field to stabilize the dimensional fluctuations, theoretically, the energies should harmonize instead of conflicting." "Theoretically?" I repeated. "Based on what calculations? What research supports this theory?" "Mine." He soldered 2 connections that should never touch. Nothing exploded. I spent the last 4 hours running simulations. 93 failed. 7 showed promising results. 7 out of 100 is a failure rate of 93%, or a success rate of 7%, depending on perspective. Danny glanced at me, and I saw something in his eyes that gave me pause. Not arrogance, something older. Pain, maybe. "Sir, can I ask you something?" I sighed, my auxiliary lungs deflating in resignation. "Proceed." "Have you ever actually seen a void phantom? In person, not recordings?" "No. Very few have and survived." "I have." Danny set down his tools, and the lab suddenly felt colder. "Station Kappa 8, 3 years ago. I was 16, working maintenance with my father in the lower decks. We heard screaming from above, then alarms, then nothing. Emergency bulkheads sealed us in a service tunnel." He stared at the disassembled weapon, but I knew he was seeing something else entirely. We watched through a maintenance camera feed. The thing moved through our station like smoke through a net. People tried fighting. They tried running. Nothing mattered. My father kept his hand over my mouth so I would not scream, would not make noise. We stayed there for 6 hours until rescue ships arrived. 4,000 people on that station. 87 survived, all because we were in sealed sections or happened to be somewhere the Phantom did not look. "I am sorry," I said, meaning it. "That must have been traumatic." "It was educational," Danny corrected. "I learned that everyone accepts this thing cannot be killed, cannot be stopped, cannot be fought. But I kept thinking, everything exists in our universe through some mechanism. Everything has rules, even if we do not understand them yet. The Phantom phases between dimensions, right? That means there is a moment, however brief, when it is transitioning. Neither fully here nor fully there. Vulnerable, maybe. That is speculation built on hope, not evidence. All breakthroughs start as speculation." Danny reconnected a power cell. and the modified rifle hummed to life, displaying readings that should be impossible. Tomorrow, during the simulation, I'm going to test something. If I am wrong, I fail the exercise. If I am right, maybe we learn something new. If you violate safety protocols, you will be expelled. Respectfully, sir, the Void Phantom does not care about protocols. He checked the weapon's calibration one final time. It kills people who follow rules just as easily as people who break them. Maybe it is time someone tried breaking different rules. I should have confiscated the weapon right then. Should have reported him to the Academy Commandant. Should have done many things. Instead, I left him in that lab, working through the night on an impossible solution to an unsolvable problem. Because deep down, beneath 40 years of military discipline and hard-earned pragmatism, I wondered if maybe the human was not entirely wrong. Every species had contributed something unique to galactic civilization. Perhaps humanity's contribution was refusing to accept that some problems had no answers. Or perhaps Danny would simply learn tomorrow what everyone eventually learned. The universe did not care about human stubbornness. Either way, the simulation would be memorable. I just hoped everyone survived it. The training arena was a cathedral of violence, 300 meters across and 50 meters high, every surface covered in holographic projectors and environmental emulators. It could simulate any battlefield in the known galaxy, from asteroid fields to underwater trenches. Today, we had configured it as an abandoned space station, all flickering lights and dark corners. Perfect hunting grounds for a Void Phantom. 23 cadets stood at the starting positions, checking equipment and trying not to look terrified. Yipper kept adjusting his sensor goggles with shaking hands. Grenth had positioned himself near the heaviest cover, already planning his hiding spots. Others clustered in groups, finding comfort in proximity, even though it meant nothing against what they were about to face. Danny stood alone, holding his modified rifle. I had noticed it immediately, but said nothing. The weapon looked wrong, bulkier than standard issue, with additional components grafted onto the frame like technological tumors. Other instructors had questioned me about it. I told them it was a learning opportunity. Let the human fail on his own terms. Cadets, attention! My voice echoed through the arena. This simulation is rated at maximum difficulty. The holographic Void Phantom will behave exactly as the real creature does, minus the actual dying part. Sensor stingers will track hits. 3 hits, you are eliminated. Elimination means failure. Your objective remains unchanged. Survive 10 minutes. Use your training. Trust your protocols. Begin. The lights dimmed. Emergency strips cast red shadows across the simulated station corridors. Somewhere in the darkness, the holographic system was generating the Phantom. Then it appeared. Even knowing it was fake, my primary heart skipped. The Phantom manifested in the center of the arena, a writhing impossibility that hurt to perceive directly. It had no true form, just suggestions of limbs, teeth, hunger. Space distorted around it, bending light into nauseating spirals. The cadets scattered immediately, exactly as trained. Yipper activated his electromagnetic disruptor and dove behind a cargo container. Grenth moved with surprising speed for his size, putting 3 walls between himself and the threat. Others followed similar strategies: distance, concealment, survival. Danny walked toward it. "Cadet, fall back," I shouted into the communication channel. "That is a direct order." He ignored me, raising his modified weapon. The rifle powered up with a sound unlike any standard plasma discharge, a rising whine that made my teeth ache. "Danny, stand down immediately. or you are expelled." I was already moving toward the arena control panel to shut down the simulation. He fired. The bolt of energy that left his weapon was wrong. It flickered through 3 different colors, phasing in and out of visibility as if uncertain whether it existed. It struck the holographic phantom dead center. Nothing happened. Of course, nothing happened. It was a hologram. Except the phantom recoiled. What? I stared at the readouts. Impossible. Holograms did not react to weapons fire unless programmed to, and this one was programmed to ignore all damage. Then every alarm in the facility started screaming at once. "Containment breach. Dimensional anomaly detected. This is not a drill." The automated warning system blared through speakers, drowning out everything else. The holographic phantom flickered once, then solidified in a way that made my blood freeze. I knew that solidity. I had seen recordings of it. This was no longer a simulation. A real void phantom had breached our shields, drawn by the holographic signature we had been projecting. It had materialized inside the training arena, overlapping with its simulated counterpart. 2 impossibilities occupying the same space, except one was very, very real. "Emergency evacuation." I hit every panic button on the control panel. "All cadets exit the arena immediately." Nobody moved. They were frozen, staring at the creature that had gone from training exercise to genuine threat in 3 seconds. The phantom turned its attention toward Yipper, who was closest. It began gliding forward, phasing through the cargo container as if it were mist. Yipper screamed. Danny fired again. This time, when the bolt struck, the phantom shrieked. An actual sound, something between tearing metal and dying stars, a noise that should not exist in atmosphere. The creature had felt that. Everyone stared. The phantom, the cadets, me, every instructor monitoring from the observation deck. We all stared at the impossible thing that had just happened. The human had hurt a void phantom. "Everybody out now," I roared. But my voice sounded distant, even to myself, because everything I knew about the universe had just changed. The void phantom recovered faster than anyone expected. It spun toward Danny, and reality rippled like disturbed water. The creature began moving with purpose now. No longer a casual hunter, but something genuinely angry. "Danny, get out!" Yipper shouted, all 4 eyes locked on the approaching horror. But the human did not run. He adjusted something on his weapon, muttering calculations under his breath, watching the phantom's movement pattern with unnatural calm. I recognized that expression now. Not suicidal bravery. Cold, methodical observation. He was learning how it moved. The creature phased through 2 walls, taking a direct path toward Danny. 20 meters, 15, 10. I was already running toward the emergency containment controls, knowing I would never reach them in time. Other instructors were screaming through communication channels, calling for military response teams that would arrive far too late. 5 meters. Danny fired again, but this time he aimed ahead of the creature, leading it like a moving target. The flickering energy bolt passed through empty space for a microsecond before the phantom materialized exactly where Danny had predicted. The bolt caught it mid-transition between dimensions. The explosion was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. A sound that pulled noise inward, creating a pocket of absolute silence, before reality snapped back with a thunderclap that shattered half the observation windows. The phantom screamed again, and part of its form destabilized, flickering like a failing hologram. Actual ichor, if you could call it that, dripped from somewhere that might have been a wound. The liquid evaporated before hitting the ground, turning to smoke that smelled like burnt copper and regret. "It is bleeding," Grenth whispered, his stone-like face showing an expression I had never seen before. Awe. The thing is actually bleeding. The phantom tried to phase through the floor, to escape downward into dimensions we could not follow. But something was wrong with it now. Its phase transitions stuttered, glitching like corrupted data. It was hurt, confused, experiencing something it had probably never felt before. Pain. Danny fired twice more in rapid succession, and I finally understood what he had done. His weapon was not designed to shoot the phantom while it existed in our dimension or while it existed in other dimensions. It was designed to catch it in the space between, during the transition itself. The recursive energy loop created a field that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, making it tangible to something that was fundamentally intangible. Insane, brilliant, impossible, and it was working. The phantom shrieked one final time, a sound of fury and something that might have been fear, then collapsed in on itself. Space warped, bent, and the creature vanished back through whatever dimensional tear it had used to enter our reality. But it was not hunting anymore. It was fleeing. Silence filled the arena. Real silence this time, not the reality-breaking absence the phantom had created. Just shocked, disbelieving quiet. Danny lowered his weapon, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Did that actually happen? Or am I having a stress hallucination? It happened, Yipper confirmed, all four eyes still dinner plate wide. You just wounded a void phantom. You made it run away. The emergency bulkheads finally opened, and Academy security forces poured in, weapons ready for a threat that was no longer present. Behind them came medical teams, administrative officers, and finally the Academy Commandant herself, a towering apex named Krill, whose species had evolved from ambush predators. She looked at the scorch marks on the floor, the shattered observation windows, then at Danny holding his jury-rigged weapon. "Explain," she demanded, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Quickly." Danny did. He explained his theory about transition vulnerability, the incompatible technologies he had combined, the 93 failed simulations before finding 7 that worked. He spoke technically, precisely, like he was defending a thesis rather than explaining how he had achieved the impossible. Krill listened without interrupting. When Danny finished, she turned to me. "Instructor Talvik, your assessment?" I looked at the human cadet, this stubborn, impossible creature who had refused to accept what every expert in the galaxy knew to be true. He violated safety protocols, ignored direct orders, and built an unauthorized weapon using restricted components. "So he is expelled?" Krill asked. "He also just accomplished what no military force in recorded history has managed. He wounded a void phantom and forced it to retreat. Expelling him would be the stupidest decision this academy could make." Krill's predatory face showed what might have been a smile. "Agreed. Cadet Danny, you are confined to quarters pending full investigation. Your weapon is confiscated for analysis. Engineers from 6 different species are going to want to examine it, replicate it, understand it." "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied, looking exhausted. "Also, you failed today's exercise. You were supposed to survive, not engage. You will retake it next semester. That seems fair." As security escorted Danny away, Yipper approached me, still vibrating with nervous energy. "Instructor Talvik, does this mean void phantoms can be killed?" I watched the human disappear through the doorway, already surrounded by researchers demanding explanations. It means they can be hurt. Whether they can be killed remains to be seen. But for the first time in galactic history, they can be fought. 3 months later, every military vessel in Allied space carried Danny's modified rifles, now mass-produced and refined by teams of engineers. The weapon became standard issue, nicknamed the Phase Breaker. Void Phantom attacks did not stop, but they stopped being massacres. They became battles. Battles we could win. And humanity, the species everyone had, dismissed as reckless newcomers, became the civilization that taught the galaxy the most important lesson. Impossible just means nobody has solved it yet. I still teach combat training. But now, when cadets ask if something can be done, I think twice before saying no. After all, a human might be listening. And humans have this terrible habit of proving people wrong. Panic is infectious. One cadet bolted for the exit, then another, then 12 more in a stampede of self-preservation. The Void Phantom swiveled its attention toward the movement, drawn to the electromagnetic signatures of fleeing prey. It began phasing toward them, picking up speed. "Danny, fall back." Yipper had somehow found his courage, though all 4 eyes were wide with terror. He activated every piece of electronic equipment on his belt, creating a cascading electromagnetic pulse designed to mask biological signatures. "It is coming." "I know." Danny adjusted something on his weapon, utterly calm. His hands moved with practiced precision, fingers dancing across controls that should not exist on any standard rifle. "Keep everyone behind me. Stay low." "Are you insane?" Grenth had frozen in place, his stone-like skin paling to gray. "You cannot fight that thing." "Watch me." The Phantom noticed Danny then, really noticed him. It stopped pursuing the fleeing cadets and turned fully toward the human who had wounded it. The air temperature dropped 15 degrees in 2 seconds. Frost formed on nearby surfaces. Reality itself seemed to bend around the creature as it focused its complete attention on this tiny, 2-armed irritant. I was running toward the arena floor, overriding security locks with my instructor codes. My 6 arms grabbed every weapon I passed, though I knew they were useless. Training kicked in anyway. Never enter a combat zone unarmed, even if your weapons were decorative. "Talvik, do not." The voice came through my communicator. Headmaster Venn watching from the observation deck. "Seal the arena. We cannot risk it escaping into the facility. There are still cadets inside. 23 cadets versus 4,000 personnel in this academy. Do the mathematics." My hand hovered over the emergency lockdown. Every military bone in my body screamed to follow orders. Contain the threat, acceptable losses, strategic thinking. I hit the lockdown override instead, keeping the doors open. "Then get down here and help me evacuate them," I snarled, and cut the communication channel. The Phantom lunged at Danny with impossible speed, closing 30 meters in a heartbeat. Its form stretched and distorted, becoming all teeth and tearing edges, phasing partially out of reality to make itself impossible to track. Danny fired 3 times in rapid succession. Each shot was different. Different colors, different sounds, different energy signatures. He was not just shooting randomly. He was experimenting, testing variables, treating this like a laboratory exercise with death as the grading criteria. The first shot missed, passing through the Phantom when it was too far phased into another dimension. The second shot grazed it, causing that horrible shriek again. The third shot hit perfectly, striking the creature at the exact microsecond it transitioned between dimensional states. The explosion was spectacular. Not the weapon exploding, but the Phantom itself. Its form erupting in cascading energy discharge as incompatible dimensional frequencies collided. It was like watching reality have a seizure. Space twisted, colors inverted, and for one impossible moment, I could see through the creature into somewhere else. Somewhere dark and hungry and vast. The phantom reeled backward, actually wounded, its form destabilized, flickering like a faulty hologram. I had seen footage of these things shrugging off orbital bombardment. Now one human with a jury-rigged rifle had done what entire battle fleets could not. It is working. Yipper was still there, refusing to abandon his friend. Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Running calculations. Danny's voice remained steady, though sweat poured down his face. The rifle was overheating, venting steam from emergency cooling ports. Its phase transition follows a pattern, irregular but repeating. Every 7.3 seconds, it has to fully manifest for 0.003 seconds to anchor itself to our reality. That is the window. That is impossible to time. I had reached the arena floor, sliding to a stop beside them. Not for him, Yipper said with something like pride. Humans have this thing, reaction speed combined with pattern recognition. They call it instinct. The phantom recovered, and now it was angry. It stopped trying to phase away and instead rushed directly at Danny, accepting solidity to maximize damage. If it could not avoid the attacks, it would end the threat before taking another hit. Danny stood his ground. The rifle was glowing red-hot now, definitely beyond safe operating parameters. One more shot might work, or the weapon might explode, taking him with it. He fired anyway. The bolt caught the phantom mid-lunge, right as it transitioned to full solidity for that microscopic anchor point. The energy matrix, that impossible combination of technologies that should have torn itself apart, instead found perfect resonance with the creature's dimensional frequency. The phantom screamed. This time, the sound carried pain and something else. Fear, maybe. It had probably never felt fear before. Its form collapsed inward, compressing into a point of darkness that hurt to look at. Then it was gone. Not dead, but retreated, fled back to whatever nightmare dimension it called home. The spatial distortions faded. Normal physics reasserted themselves. The temperature began rising back to normal. Silence. 23 cadets stared. I stared. Every instructor monitoring the situation stared. Somewhere, alarms were still blaring, but they seemed distant and unimportant. Danny lowered his weapon. The rifle finally gave up, sparking once before dying completely. He dropped it, shaking out his hands. Okay, that was terrifying. Then he smiled, and it was the most human thing I had ever seen. Not arrogant, not triumphant, just relieved. Happy to be alive. You damaged it. My voice sounded strange. You actually damaged a void phantom. Wounded it, Danny corrected. Not killed. But yeah, turns out they can be hurt. They just exist in a state that makes conventional weapons useless. You need something that can hit them during dimensional transition with energy that resonates across multiple reality frequencies simultaneously. How did you know that would work? I did not. He looked at the smoking remains of his weapon. 93% chance of failure, remember? But 7% was better than 0. Yipper laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. You bet all our lives on 7%? I bet my life. You all could have run. Nobody runs anymore. Grenth rumbled, approaching slowly. The massive cadet looked at Danny with something like awe. Not if that is an option. The arena doors burst open. Headmaster Venn arrived with a security team, medical personnel, and weapons specialists. They swarmed the area, checking for residual dimensional contamination, treating cadets for shock, and carefully collecting every piece of Danny's destroyed rifle. Ven approached me, his 3 eyes narrowed. "Instructor Talvik, you directly disobeyed a lockdown order." "Yes, sir." "Good." He turned to Danny. "Cadet, you violated approximately 17 safety protocols, destroyed Academy property, and endangered everyone in this facility." Danny stood at attention, exhausted but defiant. "Yes, sir." "Also good." Ven picked up a piece of the rifle, examining it. "This weapon design is now classified at the highest level. You will work with our research division to reproduce it, starting immediately." "Sir, I have classes." "Not anymore. As of now, you are reassigned to experimental weapons development. Congratulations, you just changed galactic military doctrine." Ven looked at me. "Talvik, you are assigned as his supervisor. Try to keep him from blowing up anything important." They left, taking Danny and his weapon fragments, leaving me standing in the training arena with a group of cadets who had just learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the answer is not accepting limitations. Sometimes, the answer is one stubborn human who refuses to believe in impossible. Yipper approached, all 4 eyes blinking in different patterns. "Instructor, are humans always like that?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. 40 years of experience, 40 years of certainty, all challenged in 10 minutes by one cadet with bad odds and good instincts. "Yes," I said finally. "I think they are, and the galaxy is never going to be the same." Outside, emergency crews were already analyzing the Yel's dimensional breach, trying to understand how a void phantom had penetrated our shields. They would find explanations, write reports, update protocols. But I knew the real story. It was simpler and more profound than any official documentation would capture. A human was told something could not be done. He loaded a weapon anyway, and the universe blinked first. That was the day I stopped underestimating humanity. That was the day we all did.